Is it good or bad to be after the break? I'm not real sure, but everybody's got energy, had some sugar? Good, it's important. I want to engage you in a conversation about plan giving, and I want to put in front of you the idea, not shocking, that plan giving can be an extraordinary resource. It's something that both the association and centers need to do more of, and we're going to talk about a strategy. But let me just mention to you some ideas about plan giving, generally speaking. I'm not going to do a lecture on plan giving vehicles. We're going to focus on the idea of the gift annuity program, but I just want to point out to you in this slide the people for whom plan giving is most relevant. And I put a question mark after is age a factor, because I used to believe that age was a factor, that you had to be 70 plus years of age to be even have this conversation. It's no longer the case, because plan giving has transactional components. It has a lot to do with what's going on in one's economic, financial, estate planning lives. So it's not really age, it's a combination of age and other factors. If you couple age with the second and third bullet points, you'll see what I'm pointing out to. There are two phases, in my judgment, of economic life we go through. One is acquisition, and one is preservation. Acquisition are the ones where we're gaining assets, we're investing in our qualified plans, we're making risks, we're creating businesses, we're selling property. That's all acquisition. It's when you get to preservation phase, when people are starting to look at their capital and be concerned that capital be preserved, that they take less risks, that we start talking about the concept of plan giving, because it involves the marriage of taking less risk with doing philanthropy. And then the third bullet point says that when you're retired, logically, you should take less risk. I was taught that if you took the number 100 and subtract age, the difference between those two is a number representing what you can be at risk. So if you're 70, then 30% of your assets, 30% of your investment should be risk. Everything else should be fairly secure. Now, people deviate from that, but that is the concept of taking less risk to make rewards so that people don't have to worry about outliving their money. In the fourth bullet point, I'm talking about windfalls. The stock market is extraordinary. Real estate has its ups and moments. People are selling and buying businesses. Any number of things are going on now. And so when windfalls occur, which means you're going to sell a capital asset, sometimes the tax cost is more expensive than what it cost you to buy the asset. And psychologically, people have the difficulty in making that transaction. We can combine tax planning through charitable giving, plan giving, to ease that cost. Bullet point number 5. How do you move assets from generation to generation? How do you go from parent to child, from parent to grandchild, at low, if any, tax costs? And charitable giving offers some alternatives to doing that. That's part of plan giving. 6 and 7, just a couple of things to point out. Retirement plan assets, IRAs, KIOs, 401ks, were troublesome enough, but now we have a new law now called the Secure, and the Secure is making them more troublesome now. Now you know you can't extend the payout on a successor IRA to the life expectancy of the next generation. It's going to be ended in 10 years, which means the tax cost the government's going to collect is going to be accelerated, and the cost to the family is going to be increased, and the relationship to what the individual is going to get at the end is going to be reduced. So right now we have to come up with some ideas, and I believe there's going to be some discussion about using charitable vehicles to ease that secure burden. It's brand new, so we deal with that as we see it. And lastly, and this is what we're going to talk about today, there are people of all ages, of all means, who are looking for predictable income for retirement. And predictable income is a moving target. What are interest rates today? They go down, they go up, they go sideways, and people find out that expenses get higher and returns get lower. So predictable income is very important. That is the charitable gift annuity that we're going to talk about in just a moment. And to lastly point out, since 17, when the Tax Act is enacted, through 2018 and 19 to 2020, we've seen some trends in charitable giving particularly. We see more and more people recognizing that it's good to give capital gain property for their charitable gifts. It always amazes me how many people still call their brokers in December and say to the brokers, please sell stock for me, I need cash to make my charitable gifts. It's very bad planning. Why would you do that when you can tell your broker instead to cherry pick the stocks that have the highest gain that your broker thinks can be transacted and send those stocks electronically to pay your charitable gifts? you don't pay tax on the gain, you get the same deduction. But we have to repeat that message, because even though it seems intuitive, people don't take advantage of it. Number two, the IRA charity rollover. We now have a larger age now. We now go to 72 before we have to take our RMD, our required minimum distribution. But at some point when you have to take your RMD, you're required to take that money out. Here's an opportunity to take that money out, all or a portion, make gifts to charity from that money. Your annual gifts, your capital gifts, your any kind of gifts to charity directly from an IRA means that money comes out at no tax cost to you. And if you're trying to keep your adjusted gross income down to get into lower marginal rates, you want to have that income passed through at no tax cost. So if you're of the age when you have to take your RMDs, look at the IRA charity rollover. It's really considerable. It's really, lots of charities are using it now just to generate their annual giving because it makes a lot of sense tax-wise. Then the other challenge is, since SALT deductions have been terribly reduced, and in some of our states, particularly around here, it's costing people a great deal of money not to be able to deduct more than $10,000 in state and local taxes. The way to increase itemized deductions is for charitable gifts, unencumbered and unlimited. But the trouble is that people are trying to figure out how to do that. Some are accelerating their gifts in 1 year and not writing them off in the second year. Some are taking advantage of the year plus 5 carryovers, any number of things. But achieving more itemized deductions will then tend to reduce adjusted gross income. So we're trying to figure that out. Bullet point 4, people using charitable gift annuities to get more income, to get a tax deduction if they itemize, but they get tax-free income at the same time. That's what we're going to talk about. Number 5, when making decisions about bequests, those of you who have included charities in your wills, and I expect almost all of you have in your wills and trusts, consider maybe that's not the best plan from a tax perspective. Maybe instead of leaving money in your will or your trust for charity, you should leave it through your qualified plan. That's double tax money. The Secure Act makes it more difficult, so you probably should be thinking about making your bequest to charities in your IRA, your KEO, your 401k. Anything where you can move those dollars directly to charity at no tax cost. And lastly, since there's going to be a tremendous amount of money being realized on sales of art, collectibles, real estate, securities, bonds, mutual funds, whatever it might be, charitable remainder trusts, which are irrevocable trusts, are really useful to avoid capital gain and get returns for life. Sometimes the returns for life can adjust year by year, what is called a uni-trust based upon market performance. We think, those of us who do this every day, that charitable remainder trust may be the solution to the 10-year issue under the Secure Act. I'm not prepared to give you the details about that today, but we're going to write about it and we'll share it with members of the board as we begin to do our work on this subject. So this, in effect, is an introduction to what we really want to talk about today, which is the potential national JCC gift annuity program for the benefit of the JCC Association and particularly for the benefit of JCCs. Those of you who know about gift annuities from federations, from universities, from any other agencies know that they are everywhere now. They've met all the tests that need to be met in terms of working them, of facilitating them, of securing them. But they don't really exist in this universe except perhaps some JCCs. I'm not familiar enough yet to respond to those who do. And some work with federations. But the concept is, and Daron and I have been together in this work for a lot of years, the concept is to build a national program based here that will be responsible for the program for the benefit of JCCs so that JCCs can do what they do best, which is market, find people interested in something, but not have to deal with all the underlying problems that come with doing the management of program where they might not have scale. So we figured that maybe a national program makes sense, and many organizations, Jewish organizations, have national programs that benefit the national organization, whether it be affiliates or whether it be just subventions of the organization itself. So here's the program description. Here's what we anticipate. JCCA will be the central address for charitable gift annuities. Only in the U.S., unfortunately. For those of you in Canada, this does not apply. The laws are different in Canada. But JCC Association would be the address. So it would be called, for one of something else, a JCC gift annuity based at the JCC Association in New York. Why New York? New York and California are the two most highly regulated states in the country. They regulate themselves to protect charities, but particularly to protect annuitants, because the questions asked by new people in this industry is, how am I going to be sure if I'm an annuitant that I will be paid? Well, New York and California have rules to make those assurances. I'll mention them in a moment. Number two, there's a lot of administrative and custodial reporting requirement. There's investment work. There's tax compliance. What JCC Association will do with this program is outsource all of that to a fiduciary agent trust company. New York requires that the assets be in the custody of a trust company. New York requires that certain investment restrictions be abided by. So all that will be done by an outside source that will do it based upon an arrangement of fee, which is by no means onerous, because it's a fees based upon assets in the program. And there are many institutions out there now that I work with that I know who do this and do this well and don't charge a great deal to do it because they have a plan giving component in their trust company. Number three, the association will do marketing support. We'll do template materials. There'll be e-blast language. There'll be things that will help centers find the market from their own perspective. Who are their contributors? Who are their members? Who are people who would like to support the JCC because of this product? So all these pieces will be prepared and be customized to be used by centers. And number four, which is probably as important as the rest, is we will provide the consulting services to centers and donors and prospects to advance the idea of why a gift annuity might be worthwhile for them. Calculations, discussions with their lawyers and accountants, ultimately preparing the documents. There will be template gift annuity agreements approved in New York that charities use to make this work. None of this is going to have to be invented. It's all there already. The point is, it opens up a market of individuals who will be grateful for the opportunity, I think, to support a JCC in this way when he or she thought that they couldn't do it and would have to do it with other charities. So we're going to have this kind of, this is the program. It's all going to be based upon New York rules and comply with the rules of states that are also regulated. New Jersey, Hawaii, Washington, California. There are a handful of states that have deep requirements. We're going to comply with all that. So if you're living in Nebraska and you want to gift annuity for the JCC in Omaha, it'll comply with New York law. If you're living in California, you want to do a JCC for a center in California, it'll comply with California law, but have to meet the terms of New York law. So it's all set up to provide security for individuals and security for the charities themselves. So with that in mind, let me just talk about the regulatory items quickly and then the next step, the action items. We have to apply in the state of New York for a permit to issue gift annuities. The state of New York is friendly to charities as long as they meet certain criteria, and we have to file all kinds of documents which go back to the original corporation documents of the association, the bylaws, go back to audit financial statements, all the things we have to submit. You have already approved item 4, which is the reserve account requirements in New York. You're just taking money that you have and just changing the name of it. It's still going to be money owned by the JCC Association. But it's going to move into this reserve account because New York requires the startup to have that much. It'll be retrieved later on when they're gift annuities, but you've already approved that resolution. That resolution is required by the state of New York. We will engage a trust company. There is no vested interest in any particular trust company, but some that I have seen over the years working with many organizations do a better job than others. So I'm going to create recommendations about who that might be, and we'll talk with the Finance Committee, Investment Committee, Development Committee, Executive Committee to be certain that we made a good decision. And lastly, we're going to comply with the rules and regulations of every state in the country that requires us to do that. The goal is, again, open up a market for people who want to do gift annuities, and perhaps want to do them with JCCs, but that JCCs really can't accept, they really don't have the personnel, the expertise, or the access to the assistance that would make it happen. That, in essence, is the program, but we have action items. And these are things that we're going to report back to you. Number one, we have to follow scheduled rates. Scheduled rates have to be accepted by the regulator. So in New York, we'll follow scheduled rates. The rates will be based upon ages. So as you get older, obviously, if you're 70 years old, your rate for your lifetime gift annuity is going to be higher than a 60-year-old, and your 90-year-old is going to be at the highest level. We're going to get a schedule of rates filed with the regulator. Number two, we have to decide on minimum gift amounts. Usually, gift annuity programs have a minimum contribution amount of $10,000. There are million-dollar gift annuities. In fact, Doreen and I are working with an individual now on the basis that if this does become a viable program that we get it approved, might be the first of the million-dollar gift annuities. Just good stuff, because people like this. It's a way of creating a vehicle that gets income for life and provides for a remainder and a value that goes to create a program or a purpose, endowment, or better yet, become unrestricted funds. Minimum ages for current and deferred annuities, decision to be made. Usually the minimum age for a current annuity is 60. Minimum age for a deferred annuity is 65. So if someone is 55 and wants to make a contribution now to establish an annuity for retirement, the annuity would begin no earlier than age 65. Why is that good? That 10-year delay, while we have the assets but the annuity is not being paid, is compounding in return, so the rate at age 65 then will be higher than if you were originally 65. We do this because we want to open up opportunity. So rate schedules, gift amounts, and minimum ages for current and deferred are things we have to propose. Again, there's no real reinvention here, that we can sort of follow the trends of other charities are doing. New York is a very competitive market, you must suspect, and we're going to be looking at a gift annuity program in relationship to other Jewish community organizations who are in the metro New York area, which is a greater challenge for us. But Doreen and I met that challenge some years ago when we built a brand new gift annuity program, and we figured out what we needed to do, and as a consequence, the program became very successful. I have no doubt that this program would be more successful because we have such an extraordinary array of JCCs throughout the country which will find this useful and will procure donors that might never have surfaced otherwise. Number two, committees. There are three important committees here. The Finance Committee, which will help us figure out the economic benefit to the JCC Association and JCCs. The Investment Committee is going to have to work with the trust company to decide on asset allocation. We're not going to pick stocks here or bonds. We're going to pick asset allocation and let that decision be made by the experts. And the Development Committee, which is the core group of people who are going to help us set policy and set a tone for this, which I know will be adopted by the board and by the Executive Committee, because we're going to be doing this all together. You'll find that when you're looking at people in the scene where they're interested in something like this, that this is kind of a win-win for most individuals. An opportunity to be a giver, an opportunity to make a difference, and an opportunity to retain income for life. It's pretty compelling, and it's a very reasonable sale, but we have to make it known. We have to make to the market known that this program exists and is being taken care of nationally, but it filters down locally. Which takes us to bullet point 3, which is a really hard thing we're beginning to work on. How do you develop the policies and the agreement that allows participation by JCCs and JCC donors in this national program? What is the share? Are there fees? We're really working on that now. The goal is that as much as possible, and that's a vague, I know it's vague, but let me say it another way. Most, if not all, of the remainder of each of this gift annuities is going to go back to the JCC. That's really the goal. We're trying to make that happen. We don't want this to be a program where it's perceived that the association is doing better than where it ought to be, which is back in the field where it initiated. So we're working on that idea now. And our goal, having filed with the state of New York the permit application and getting our permit, and having gotten all this other pieces together, is to get this started by this spring, which is apparently today. I'm not trying to rush it, but I want to. Let me just finish up by a couple things. I need to define some terms. Many of you probably know this. Let me just define some terms. What is a gift annuity? I'm talking about this ad nauseum, but what is it really? It's a simple transaction between individual or individuals, one or two, and a charity that in exchange for a gift of cash or securities, and in many instances even other kinds of property, based upon a fixed rate in the tables, there'll be payments made for life or lives. That's all it is. You can see my character there who makes a gift of cash or securities in exchange for the annuity. The annuity gets paid back for life or lives based upon the rate. And that word residual means that at the end of the term of the annuity, whatever remains in that particular contract goes to charity. I want to preempt a question, and this is where you have to understand the mathematics. The tables of rates are irrespective of interest rates. They have nothing to do with interest rates. Really have nothing to do with market returns. They're based upon actuarial tables. So how do you know if you're paying somebody who's older at a high rate, how do you know that you're going to get that money back at the end? Suppose he or she lives to be 105. Well, we need scale. We need to have what we call laddering. We need 60-year-olds and we need 90-year-olds. We need along that scale so we can mollify the risk. But the program is predicated on the proposition that if the reserve account of gift annuity funds earns 4.5% total return a year, and if people live normal life expectancy, that we would expect to receive between 50 and 60% of the contribution when it's over. Not 100%. There's no illusion about that. The mathematics won't work that way. So the tables are built on the concept that we'll receive 60%, if we can, or 50%. That's what will filter down. A $100,000 gift annuity established today for a center will be anticipated to be sending $50,000 to that center at the end of the term. The better the return on the investments, more than 4.5, the more that we have people living normal life expectancies and not going beyond that, the greater the percentage that will be paid out at the end. That's all important data because unlike an outright gift, there's going to be some reduction of this because we're paying out. So this is what a gift annuity is, and I wanted to show you a couple of small points. Number one, the gift annuity can be immediate, which means you buy it today, it starts today, or it can be deferred, you buy it today and it starts at a time in the future. One life or two lives, could be spouses, could be partners. I've done a great many annuities where an older aunt leaves a gift annuity for herself and a nephew who's 30 years younger. It's all a function of age. The rate is based upon the younger person. So when I did one the other day for an 88-year-old woman, and her daughter is 64, rate's 5.8. Why isn't it based upon the older person's life? Because it's going to run based upon the younger person's life. So that's what these gift annuities are. But these are things that are interesting, and this comes up a great deal. Look at the box left top. Even though I may say to you, how old are you? And you'll say to me, I'm 62. And I'll say to you, maybe not. And you'll say to me, you're crazy, kid. What do you mean, maybe not? I know how old I am. Well, you might be 63. Because you are your age to your nearest birthday. So if you're within 6 months of your next birthday, you're 63. Well, the only reason you want to be older is your rate's higher. So I'm doing a calculation for someone who's asked for a January calculation. Turns out that on February 7th, she'll be within 6 months of August 7th. So I said to her, let's not calculate January. Let's calculate February 7th. Gives her a more increased rate. Donors like that, prospects like that. They say, well, you're actually paying attention to me. You're looking at my date of birth as opposed to my age. So when I get a request for calculations, I always say to the fundraiser, for example, give me the date of birth or births. Number two, on the right side top, two life rates. Two life rates are always lower than the rate for the younger person. Now you wonder why. If the rate for the younger person is 6%, say, for example, and the older person's rate is 8%, why would the total rate of the two of them be 5.7? It's called the IRS happiness factor. IRS insists that people who are together live longer collectively than they do apart, because they're happier.
Or not.
I'm not buying that, but that's what they say. So that's something that's hard to tell people to understand, that the lower rate is because of the joint life expectancy. Number three, bottom left. You all know that gifts of appreciated property to charity, like stocks, are deductible at full value and you pay no tax on the gain, except with gift annuities. Because a gift annuity is part purchase and part gift. And the purchase price portion recognizes the gain in installments. So having said all that, when we do calculations for gift annuities using stocks, we show three components of tax: ordinary income tax, tax-free portion, and long-term capital gain portion. You want to avoid the long-term capital gain portion, you give cash, then your deductions are there and you get both ordinary income and tax-free income. Again, we do these calculations for people and they see it. It's all visualized and it's all easy to understand. And number 4, bottom right, when questions are asked, what happens if I live on life expectancy? I say, you did a good job. You're going to get paid a little longer. That's not great for the charity, but what can we do? But it is the way the rules are. You live and be paid for the entire amount of your lifetime. We used to jokingly say in meetings like this, well, gift annuities are great because people tend to live longer when they have them. Where are you going to go with interest rates it's so low and the return so high? But then there was a study made some years ago by the American Council on Gift Annuities in which they actually concluded that there is evidence, I don't know if there's cause and effect, that gift annuitants tend to live a bit longer than people who don't. I don't know. That's a sales, we can't publish them.
Yeah, I had just real quick. One is just a very technical thing, and then one I'd like your commentary. The technical question is, if the JCC Association is the charity that is operating and whatever you said, central address for it, you know, one of the differences between an annuity and a charitable remainder trust is that the liability is on the charity to make those payments.
With the annuity. With
the annuity is and it can go into if it uses up what's in the annuity, it's a credit, it's a liability of the charity itself. Would the charity on the hook for that be the association or the local JCC?
Well, assuming that could happen, because
I agree.
Assuming that could happen, a liable charity would be the association because the association is underwriting this whole thing.
So it's not the beneficiary.
Exactly. If the JCC issued its own gift annuity, it would be responsible.
But in this scenario, it would be the association.
Exactly. But because that's an important question, the regulations do all kinds of work to assure that the charity will be the last resort to do it.
Okay, then the second, and I'd like your commentary, and I alluded to the charitable remainder trust. With my clients, that's usually been the avenue we've gone, mainly because it's simpler and it's not agency dependent and you can split it up between multiple charities and whatever. I was curious, this sounds like something you have way more experience in. What would be the benefit of going a charitable annuity versus a charitable remainder trust?
Ease, not a trust agreement, no trust returns to file. K1s can be varied each year. We know exactly with this what's going to happen for all these years. We know exactly what the tax-free portion is every year. As you know with CRTs, you don't know year by year how you're going to pay tax. But to speak of charitable remainder trust, because you may have a very large pool of appreciated assets that you're worried about capital gain, you dump the capital gain in that. So that's why this is customized. That's why I said earlier this morning that this is like bespoke clothing. We're going to cut this cloth for every individual based upon what he or she best needs for family. But good questions in both instances. Let me just go to one thing. I think it's important to look at an example. This is what I would be showing a donor in a proposal if he or she were looking at a gift annuity. So I'm looking at my mannequin, who you can see is both male and female and whatever else could possibly exist. And there's $10,000 in cash being contributed to a charity to buy a gift annuity. So you see the arrow going over to annuity value. You can see that this donor is 75 years of age and his or her life expectancy, gender neutral tables, is 12.4%. So we know by the calculation which I did just the other day using an assumed rate that line 1, the purchase price of this annuity is $10,000. Line 2, the annuity rate based on the tables is 7.1%. Thus, line 3, the annuity is going to be $710 a year. All pretty easy. Line 4 we know, because when I did the calculation, I had the IRS discount rate, that the charitable deduction was going to be virtually 32% of the contribution, $3,177. Now, if you're a taxpayer and your combined marginal rate, or if you're in Florida, yes, your marginal rate is 25%, that deduction should save you, if you itemize, $794 in taxes. So therefore, your cost is really reduced from $10,000 to $9,206. That's line 1 minus line 5. If it really costs you $9,206 to buy the annuity and you're getting paid $710, your effective return is 7.7. Interestingly, the two most important lines in this document for people who are looking to gift annuity are lines 2 and line 8. We know in this calculation in line 8 that 77.5% of this annuity will be paid tax-free. So when he or she gets a 1099-R end of year, it says receive $710, and over 3/4 of it is tax-free. Return of principal. If you're an accountant, you think financially, it sort of grosses up the return because you're getting paid so much of it is tax-free money. This is what we show a prospect, whether it be 1 line or 2 lines, whether it be current or deferred, and when we do a proposal for them, we incorporate this in the body of the letter. So it's nothing there that is unusual, but I think the best way to see it is to see an illustration. As an example, if any of you want to have a confidential illustration of one just to see what it looks like, I'm happy to do it, but you have to admit your age. So this is what, we can do this with 2 lines, with capital gain, with deferred, using IRA money, any number of things. But I think the goal today is for you to believe in the program. It's not brand new, it's being done by many charities. To believe that it would be good for both the association, but particularly for JCCs. To believe that it will open up a market that probably doesn't exist yet, or if it exists, it's kind of a shadow market. And to enable people to participate with giving they otherwise do with JCCs because the program doesn't exist. And to give JCC Association the opportunity to build this thing as a way of bringing a terrific service to JCCs and to enable JCCs to raise a great deal more money. So I think, Gary, that I've gotten to the point where maybe I'll take questions.
Right, you have a few questions.
2 questions, really. First question is, how are the expenses of all these services going to be covered? That's question 1. The second question is, with respect to the rates, I've seen different organizations offering different rates. I assume they do that from a marketing point of view. You seem to say that all the rates are fixed. So,
okay, well,
where am I missing something?
No, let me ask in both order. The costs are going to be the costs charged to us by the fiduciary agent. So, for example, if the trust company charges 3/4 or 75 basis points to do the whole thing, admin, investment, compliance, payouts, 1099-Rs, it's going to be based on assets under management. It won't be a line item from the JCC Association. So when you're talking about the return of 0.4 or 4.5%, you really want a return of 5.25%, which is 4.5% investment return and 0.75 cost. That's the cost. There'll be no actual cost in-house here because it's all going to be outsourced.
But we will attempt to recover costs as well for ourselves.
Even all the consultation that you refer to?
Well, that's part of what we're going to offer from the association. That's part of what I'm called upon to do. So there is a cost, I guess, because I exist, but that'd be any kind of personnel cost you would have. So that reduces it considerably. What we're working on now is whether the association, what the association will also charge as part of its work to recoup some of its labor costs, I suppose you could call it. And that's what we're working on now. We're going to discuss it. It should not be large because it would not be fair. We really want to make it most beneficial to the centers, but there'll be some kind of cost. Will it be recoverable regularly, or will it be recoverable at the end? We have to work through that yet. Second point, the rates are fixed in the tables of rates filed, but they can be different between charities. So in New York, I made the comment before about the competitive market. We may need to be higher in New York to compete, and we want to build markets. And so we may, instead of getting 60% of the residuum at the end, only get 55% because the rate's going to be a bit higher, but it will appeal to people who sometimes shop. We want shoppers, but we want people who are going to shop because they want to be part of the JCC movement, not just because of the rates. So that's the challenge, but we're not bound to any kind of fixed rates, but we're going to file rates that give us a competitive participation.
And who's responsible for establishing the investment policy for funds that are sitting in the,
Our investment.
That's good. I'll give some suggestions based upon lots of experience, but the investment committee will make that decision.
so the agency has a fiduciary responsibility? Correct?
Yeah, we are the ones that are on the book, so we have the fiduciary responsibility.
Is this a profit center for the JCCA?
Yes.
Should be.
Well,
Not a big one, but it should be a recurring income as we get volume.
Yeah, if we have multiple millions of dollars of assets in the gift program, all of which are the greatest bulk of which is going down to the centers, there will be some resources from those assets that come to the association.
But also, in point one of the original slide, you can also do it to the JCC associations, not just to the JCC, so you can create a CGA for here as well.
Yeah, and I know you said it's not really a big concern, but I worry if this thing were to become successful and big, and if we went to a even lower, if you ended up in a situation where rates and market, whatever, is there a way to offload the risk to the association for the income liability to insurance? Like, are there people that come in and will assume that if you all of a sudden are on the hook for these distributions and the portfolio isn't able to, I don't know, I mean, you have more experience in this than me.
If the market suggests, and this is a big decision by a group of executives,
Right.
that it's becoming too risky to do this business, the state of New York allows you to go to reinsurance.
Okay.
But reinsurance premiums are high, it takes away a lot of the benefits of the charity, but that is always a possibility. But I've never seen it done because the way the reserve rules are in New York with the surpluses required, and the way in my belief that you overfund these reserves all the time anyway, that unless there's a vast reduction in the market, we're going to be a 60-40 asset allocation, 50-50, we're going to have a lot of fixed income, so going to be protected on the downside. Good points, but experience suggests that we don't have to worry about that. We just have to be very careful with the committees taking care of the fiduciary role they have to take care of.
How at risk to tax law change is this, and if so, what's your assessment?
Well, it's an important question generally about charitable giving. What would happen if the tax law said that charitable remainder trusts aren't exempt anymore, or that gifts of stock would not be immune from tax on gain? If that happened, everything that happened prior to that would be grandfathered. It wouldn't be ex post facto. The likelihood of that happening is remote, because this goes back to the 19th century, these things. This began in Bible colleges in Texas, was codified back in the 1940s, so it's possible but not probable, but if it did happen, then what happens ends, and everything going forward we just don't do, but we have the inventory of annuities to take care of otherwise.
But this is not a target comparable to if there's a change in administration, comparable to the other targets that we use.
No, it's like charitable giving has met the tests of administrations and tax code revisions and things, and if anything has been enhanced, not reduced. I've asked this question a great deal. We're just not worried about that because there's no benefit for the government reducing the tax advantages of charitable giving, because if they do, the government's going to have to allocate to communities what communities are taking care of for themselves. So there's no talk at all. The only talk that's in Congress nowadays is they're worried that the Fidelities and the Vanguards and the Dreyfuses of the world are using the donor advised fund business to enhance their bottom lines, and that's been some conversation about compelling people who have philanthropic funds to make grants as opposed to accumulate. But that's just because they want more money out of the charitable system. But to your point, there's just no feeling anywhere that they're going to one day decide that charitable gift annuities ought not to be used. I think they're going to make it better. My only example of that is this whole idea of the IRA charity rollover, where you could use money each year to make gifts to charity. We used to have to fight every year for renewal on that. Every year we used to battle renewal, and we have to get to the end of the year, we didn't know it. Now it's codified. Now, there's no, it just renews automatically. This became that.
Thank you.
Yes?
On one of the slides you showed, you had mentioned that you get a tax deduction when you donate the money if it's cash. You didn't show that on the example, so there would be, the first year you get an additional benefit. It sounds
Well,
like.
if you look back, let me go back on this example here. You see line 4. Line 4 says the tax deduction for doing this is $3,177, rounded 32%. People say to me, why isn't my deduction $10,000? Well, logically, it's not $10,000 because you're getting the income back, and there's a discount factor. So the number we calculate based upon the IRS rules is that because you're 75 and you're going to live 12.4 years, it's not a $10,000 deduction, it's really discounted to $3,100, but there is a deduction we calculate on each one of these.
And that continues for a lifetime.
Well, that deduction is a single deduction, it's a single gift.
Oh, okay.
So you deduct it in the year you create the annuity. If you can't use it in that year, you carry it over for up to 5 more years. That's deduction. It doesn't recur, but the tax-free portion recurs every year in your payments. That's recurring.
Any other questions? I entertain a motion then to authorize Neil, in conjunction with JCC Association Management, to move ahead with the necessary steps to establish a national charitable gift annuity program for the JCC movement. So moved. Thank you. Is there a second? All right. The risk of starting another firestorm. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.